What if I told you that the airport experience you've grown up with is about to become completely unrecognizable? Not in 10 years, not in 5. Right now, in 2026, airports are rolling out changes so drastic that some travelers are being stopped at the gate, charged unexpected fees, and even boarding planes without ever showing a passport. These changes are so significant that frequent flyers are calling it the biggest shift in commercial aviation history. And whether you travel once a year or every single week, these updates are going to affect you directly. Before you book your next flight, there are 7 new airport rules in 2026 that could cost you money, delay your trip, or completely change how you get on a plane. Some airports now identify you from over 30 feet away before you even reach the gate. And near the end of this video, I'll show you the one new rule that's already catching thousands of travelers off guard at the gate. Let's start with something that's already being tested in major hubs across the United States, Europe, and Asia. Biometric processing is no longer optional in many airports. For years, we've seen those face-scanning kiosks pop up here and there, and most of us figured we could just skip them and hand over our passport the old-fashioned way. That era is ending fast. In 2026, several of the world's busiest airports have moved to a system where your face literally is your boarding pass. Some airports now identify you from over 30 feet away before you even reach the gate. No more fumbling for your phone or digging through your carry-on for your passport. The technology has advanced to the point where it works reliably even with glasses, hats, and masks. Now, for a lot of travelers, this is genuinely exciting. Lines move faster, human error is reduced, and the whole process feels seamless. But here's the tension that nobody's really talking about. This data doesn't just disappear. Airports and the airline systems connected to them are storing biometric information, and the rules around how long that data is kept and who has access to it vary wildly depending on which country you're in. If you travel internationally, that's worth paying attention to. Next, let's talk about security because this is where things get really interesting. The old conveyor belt setup with the plastic bins and taking off your shoes has been a staple of airport life since the early 2000s. In 2026, major airports are replacing that system with what's called computed tomography scanning, or CT scanning. You've probably seen hints of this already, but the full rollout is happening now. What this means practically is that you no longer need to remove your laptop from your bag. You no longer need to pull out your liquids. The scanners are powerful enough to see through everything in 3-dimensional detail, which means security lines should theoretically move much faster. The operative word there is theoretically. Some airports have seen genuine improvements, while others are still working through the operational kinks. The key thing you need to know is that even though you don't have to unpack your bag, these scanners are extremely sensitive to dense or unusual objects. But here's where it gets strange. Items that would have sailed through the old system are now flagging alerts. Travelers have reported being stopped for things like protein bars, dense clothing, and even certain electronic accessories. So even though the process seems more relaxed, you might want to be more strategic about how you pack, not less. Now here's something that's going to hit budget travelers especially hard. Carry-on luggage rules are being tightened in a big way by multiple airlines in 2026. This has been building for a while, but the enforcement is now much stricter. Airlines are investing in sizers at the gate, attendants with measuring tools, and in some cases, weight scales specifically for overhead bin bags. If your bag doesn't fit the exact dimensions, you're not getting a friendly reminder. You're getting charged on the spot, and those fees are not small. We're talking anywhere from $50 on the lower end to over $150 depending on the airline and the route. The reason behind this shift is pretty straightforward from the airline's perspective. Overhead bin space has become genuinely scarce as more people try to avoid checked baggage fees, and airlines have decided that the solution is to monetize the chaos rather than fix it. What this means for you is simple. Measure your bag before you leave home, not your biggest bag, the one you actually use for travel. You might be surprised. Now let's shift to something that's more positive because this video isn't just about warnings. One of the genuinely exciting developments in 2026 is the expansion of pre-clearance programs. And this next part surprised even frequent flyers. If you travel internationally from certain countries, you may now be able to clear customs and immigration before you even board your flight. Programs that used to be limited to a handful of routes are now being extended to dozens of new city pairs. What this means is that when you land at your destination, instead of joining the massive immigration line that can add 2 hours to your journey, you walk straight out into the arrivals hall. Travelers landing in New York or Chicago have reported skipping immigration lines that normally take 90 minutes. If you qualify for any of these programs and you haven't signed up yet, you're leaving a serious amount of time on the table. Let me also mention something that's quietly transforming the airport experience from the inside out. Dynamic pricing has come to airport services in a way it hasn't before. Parking, lounge access, even fast-track security in some international airports is now priced the same way airline seats are priced. The further in advance you book, the lower the rate. If you show up and want lounge access on the day of travel, you might pay 3 times what someone who booked 2 weeks ago paid. A lounge pass that costs $35 in advance can jump to over $100 the day you fly. This is a direct result of airports trying to maximize revenue after the financial hits of recent years, and it means that spontaneous travel is going to cost you more. Planning ahead has always been smart. Now it's essentially mandatory if you want to avoid being price gouged at every turn. There's also a major change happening with digital identity documents. Several countries are now piloting mobile passports and digital IDs that can be used at airport checkpoints. This is exciting but complicated. Not every country accepts them yet. Not every airport system is compatible, and the legal framework is still being sorted out in many jurisdictions. If you're an early adopter type, this is worth exploring for domestic travel. For international travel, always bring your physical passport until the system is much more universally accepted. The last thing you want is to be standing at a foreign immigration counter trying to explain why your passport is on your phone. One more thing before we wrap up, and this one affects everyone who's ever had a flight delayed or canceled. In 2026, passenger rights regulations in both the European Union and in several other countries have been significantly strengthened. If your flight is canceled or substantially delayed and the airline is at fault, the compensation you're entitled to has increased, and critically, the process for claiming it has been streamlined. Airlines operating in these regions are now required to proactively notify you of your rights and, in some cases, issue compensation automatically. Know your rights before you fly. If something goes wrong, you may be owed money, and you might not even know it. So let's bring this all together. The airport in 2026 is faster in some ways and more complicated in others. Biometrics are changing how you're identified. CT scanners are changing how your bags are checked. Carry on, rules are getting stricter and more expensive to break. Pre-clearance is expanding and offering real-time savings for smart travelers. Dynamic pricing is rewarding people who plan ahead. Digital documents are coming but aren't fully ready for prime time. And passenger rights protections are stronger than ever if you know how to use them. The travelers who thrive in this new environment are going to be the ones who treat the airport like a game with rules that reward preparation and punish complacency. The rules have changed. Now, you know what they are. Smart travelers know these rules before they fly. Share this with someone who has a trip coming up because there's a good chance they have no idea any of this is happening. And if you want to go deeper on any of these topics, I've got more videos coming that break each one down in detail. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss them. Safe travels.